What business does a middle school graduate have at a big company? You must be lost, so go home immediately. When I arrived at the client company for the meeting, Kevin, a classmate from middle school, mocked me. In middle school, I did live a life that could be called the bottom rung, and I went straight to work without attending high school. Is being a middle school graduate really such a bad thing? I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the anger rising within me. It seems I'm really out of place here. Excuse me. With that, I quietly left the place. On the way back to my company, I called my secretary, Clark, on my phone. Cancel the ongoing deal. Pull everyone out. Are you serious? That's a $30 million deal. Yes, I'm serious. We'll sign with the other company, Stevens. Besides Kevin's company, Sunlight, we had another potential company for this deal, and the discretion of which company to work with was entrusted to me. My name is Tom. I'm 42 years old and work at a major air conditioning equipment company called Johnson. Currently, I'm having busy days as I approach a new contract. I want to finalize this deal quickly and disband the team as soon as possible. It's tough to work with people you don't get along with. It takes extra effort, and the discussion often stalls due to disagreements regarding this contract. It shouldn't be that difficult in the first place. What complicates things is the presence of the sales manager, James. James is also 42 and has been the sales manager since last year. We've worked together several times since we were young, but we always clashed and never ended things on a good note. James had a stellar career and walked the elite path from the start. He graduated from a prestigious university in Tokyo and joined Johnson with great fanfare. He climbed the corporate ladder smoothly until I came along and disrupted things. Because we are the same age, we were seen as good rivals within the company. This didn't sit well with the proud James. I had worked at a subsidiary for a long time, and due to my achievements, I was brought into Johnson. From this experience, James completely looked down on me. However, since I started working at the same company, James has been having a rough time. He's not popular with women at all. He started balding at the crown in his 30s, and due to constant drinking at business meetings, his belly protrudes. Because of his appearance, he has no popularity among the female employees. On the other hand, I'm 6 feet tall, and I regularly work out at the gym, so I have a toned body. James was often compared to me in terms of appearance, which fueled his competitive spirit. He found out which gym I went to and immediately signed up, but having no habit of exercising for years, he became a member, but never seemed to go. Therefore, he saw no results, and just walking a little made him sweat profusely and sit down panting heavily. That's why he has no connections with women and is still single at 42. On the other hand, I got married at 30, and although we don't have children, I live happily with my beautiful wife. This time I was to lead the team to finalize the contract, but there were significant problems with the client, which was causing me a headache. The other person causing me headaches was Kevin. Kevin was my classmate in both elementary and middle school, and I have no fond memories of him. I thought we had gone our separate ways for good and would never have to see each other again, but life has a funny way of bringing people back together. In middle school, we were rivals, always competing for the top spot in exams. We both had a strong desire not to lose, which drove us to study hard. I think that's when I learned the value of effort. If that period shaped who I am today, then maybe it wasn't so bad. But at the time, it was tough. I wanted a peaceful middle school life, but Kevin kept provoking me. From Kevin's perspective, he was supposed to always be number one, but my presence disrupted his plans. He must have held a grudge. Kevin had received elite education since before kindergarten. His mother, in particular, was very passionate about education and tried to get him into a prestigious private kindergarten. But Kevin failed the kindergarten entrance exam miserably. He couldn't hold it during the family interview and had to rush to the bathroom. Even now, his mother complains to the neighbors about Kevin's failure. Growing up with a mother who broadcasts such childhood failures to the neighborhood, how could a child develop properly? Kevin ended up attending a public kindergarten and failed again when trying to get into a prestigious private elementary school. By the time he was in middle school, his mother no longer pushed him to go to a famous school. This made Kevin feel more liberated, and his grades improved significantly. If I hadn't been his classmate, he would have easily been the top student, leaving remarkable records. Even when he did come in first, people would ask, "What happened to the other guy?" This time, to Kevin, I was nothing but an obstacle. After middle school, we went our separate ways, and I'm sure we both felt relieved. Kevin likely never expected to cross paths with me again, especially in his 40s. Given the importance of this deal to our company, I, as the team leader, had to go in person. The thought of meeting Kevin again after all these years weighed heavily on my mind. However, I thought maybe Kevin, having been through the trials of society, might have learned to consider others' feelings. If so, could we overcome our long-standing animosity and become friends? But that was just a fantasy. We were like the north and south poles of a magnet, destined to repel each other. Kevin's company, Sunlight, is a major player in building management. It was impressive how he had steadily climbed the ranks. When our team from Johnson arrived at the Sunlight headquarters, we were shown to the meeting room. There stood Kevin, with stylishly groomed hair and a high-end suit. Kevin immediately recognized me from the moment we exchanged business cards. He was disrespectful only towards me. As the meeting leader, Kevin introduced the Sunlight members, but avoided eye contact with me. The Sunlight employees looked puzzled, unsure how to interact with me. Suddenly, Kevin spoke to me directly. "What are you doing here? Are you here to handle the machinery?" "Well, something like that," I replied, not wanting to provoke Kevin by revealing I was the team leader. Then Kevin insulted me loudly enough for everyone in the meeting to hear. "What business does a middle school graduate have at a big company? You don't belong here, so leave immediately." In middle school, besides having good grades, I did live a life that could be called the bottom rung, and I went straight to work without attending high school. But is being a middle school graduate really such a bad thing? I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the anger rising within me. It seems I'm really out of place here. "Excuse me." With that, I quietly left the place. On the way back to the company, I called my secretary, Clark, on my phone. "Cancel the ongoing deal. Pull everyone out." "Are you serious? That's a $30 million deal." "Yes, I'm serious. We'll sign with the other company, Stevens." Besides Kevin's company, Sunlight, we had another potential company for this deal, and the discretion of which company to sign with was entrusted to me. After hanging up, I put my phone in my chest pocket and looked out the car window. I now have a personal driver, and I can sit in the spacious back seat of a luxury car, spending my travel time in comfort. However, it took a lot of effort to get where I am today. I grew up without a father from a young age, raised by my mother and grandmother. According to my grandmother, my father ran off with another woman. Since then, my mother worked hard outside while my grandmother took care of the house and looked after me. I got used to not having a father around, but you never really get used to being poor. Moreover, once you start school, the difference in wealth becomes apparent through your belongings. Kevin's family was wealthy, and everything he owned was top-notch. As for me, I lived on hand-me-downs from neighbors. Though I was often praised for my good grades at school, outside of that, my poverty stood out and made me feel miserable. In middle school, the countdown began for the inevitable fate of entering the workforce with just a middle school education. It was far from an enjoyable 3 years. After graduating middle school, with no changes in my circumstances, Kevin and I went our separate ways. I joined a subsidiary of Johnson, thanks to a connection my homeroom teacher had. The president of that subsidiary, Mr. Williams, had also struggled and started the company with just a middle school education. Seeing Mr. Williams gave me hope. Mr. Williams suggested I work while attending night school, allowing me to continue my education with the support and understanding of my coworkers, who kindly covered my night shifts. I never missed a class, despite others dropping out. I graduated high school with perfect attendance and entered a night university. I studied architecture in college, which directly benefits my current job. Thus, my credentials changed from middle school graduate to university graduate. It was all thanks to the help and cooperation of my colleagues. I vowed to repay this company for the rest of my life. After various events, I moved to the parent company, Johnson, following Mr. Williams's retirement. I now hold the position of director of the business department at Johnson headquarters. Next year, I am set to be promoted to an executive role as director. I decided to switch the business partner from Sunlight to Stevens. Other employees returned from Sunlight headquarters looking puzzled. "Tom, what's going on? We worked so hard on this deal, and now it's canceled at the last minute." "Sorry for the sudden change. The person in charge over there didn't like the idea of me leading the negotiations. It could cause problems for your work later on. Now that you mention it, Kevin did say something arrogant when he saw you. He talked with James after you left. I knew James had been working hard to secure this deal with Sunlight. I'll have to explain later that my decision wasn't out of spite towards James. If we signed with Sunlight, I'd have to see Kevin frequently. It's not just about me feeling uncomfortable. I expected it would negatively affect my employees. If Kevin looked down on me, the director, he would treat the other employees as inferior. Knowing Kevin's personality from childhood, I could predict his behavior. I have to protect the employees who work hard with me. In fact, everyone who heard Kevin's insults was furious. That Kevin guy called you a middle school graduate at the bottom. Tom, you have an exemplary career, graduating from university while contributing to the company. I've interacted with Kevin twice leading up to this deal, and he was just awful. Right after we exchanged business cards, he asked about my alma mater. When he realized my rank was lower, he immediately looked down on me. On the other hand, Paul from Stevens is wonderful. I've been negotiating with Stevens, and he has a personality that makes you want to work with him. Even when Sunlight was chosen, he didn't show any resentment. No one criticized my decision to switch partners at the last minute. The only one who might still be grumbling would be James, who was still talking with Kevin at Sunlight headquarters. As I was discussing this with my team, my secretary Clark entered the room. "Kevin from Sunlight is here to see you. Will you meet him?" I had no time to hesitate as Kevin forcefully entered right behind Clark. Looking very distressed, Kevin approached me quickly and bowed deeply. "I apologize. I had no idea you were in charge of this deal. James told me about your struggles and how you graduated from university. It's an inspiring story. You may have only known me as a middle school graduate, but whether or not I am the negotiator, those comments were unacceptable. I cannot work with someone who places such importance on academic background. I firmly rejected him." Kevin trembled and looked up at me with pleading eyes. We used to be the same height in middle school, but I grew significantly taller afterward. Now Kevin had to look up at me. I wondered how he felt about the person he once looked down on now being taller and higher in social status. "Please don't say that. This contract is crucial for our company. I'm responsible for it, and if it falls through, I won't know what to tell my superiors." "That's not my concern. You aren't happy to see me again, are you? It's better for both of us if we don't interact anymore. Please, I beg you, reconsider." Gone was his earlier arrogance, replaced by a pale face and repeated bows. He must hate bowing to someone like me. This must be the sad reality of being a corporate employee. At this moment, I was completely victorious. Kevin finally got on his knees, begging for forgiveness. I realize now how I've made you uncomfortable since middle school. If this deal falls through, I'm in big trouble. I apologize for everything in the past, so please forgive me." As Kevin grumbled on the floor, Clark entered and announced, "The representatives from Stevens have arrived." I left Kevin there and went to meet the Stevens team. Kevin lingered for a while but eventually gave up and left. The deal with Stevens went smoothly, thanks to the groundwork laid by our team. With the new contract, James, who had been working on the Sunlight deal, found himself isolated. "James, I'm sorry, but I had to make this decision." James was furious with my decision. "We worked so hard to advance this deal, and now you're canceling it at the last minute. What was all my effort for?" I truly apologize for that. This decision wasn't out of spite. You know my history with Kevin, but this isn't about old grudges. I felt genuinely sorry for James, who had been handling the negotiations. While I couldn't work with Kevin, James and I were colleagues. I hoped to move forward without causing further conflict. I sincerely bowed to James. James seemed to misinterpret my humble gesture. Suddenly, he puffed up his chest and pointed his finger at me. "Do you think bowing is enough? Your forehead hasn't touched the floor. If you're really sorry, bow until your head scrapes the floor." Employees nearby looked on in shock. James, as the sales manager, was below me in rank, and demanding such an excessive apology from his superior was problematic. At that moment, I heard the sound of high heels in the hallway. At the familiar sound, I lifted my head and looked toward the entrance of the room. My wife, Maya, appeared shortly after. Usually, she would greet me with a sweet smile, but she had clearly overheard our exchange and was furious. She stormed into the room, directing her anger at James. "Who do you think you are to demand my husband bow to you? You're just a sales manager. Maya is still head over heels for me, and we have an excellent relationship. Raised as the only daughter of the current president, Mr. Johnson, Maya never had any financial difficulties. She studied abroad in America during high school and went on to a prestigious women's university in Tokyo. After graduating from university, she worked in an office in the city for a while, but returned home at Mr. Johnson's request. Mr. Johnson intended for Maya to marry a man holding a significant position in the company. However, Maya, despite her straightforward personality, wanted to live her life according to her own will, not just following her father's wishes. She was willing to consider her father's opinion on her marriage partner, but she ultimately wanted to make her own choice. I remember our first date. At that time, both of us were in our 20s, and James didn't have a protruding belly or a bald head yet. I once asked Maya, out of curiosity, what she saw in James. Well, back then, his lack of good looks made me feel secure. I didn't have to worry about anyone else taking him. But as I started hearing bad things about him at work, my feelings cooled. As they continued dating, Maya began to feel uncomfortable with James's arrogant attitude and baseless confidence. Eventually, their relationship was full of arguments, and they grew apart. During this time, Maya happened to visit the head office and saw me walking down the hallway. She fell in love at first sight. She quickly started gathering information about me and, reassured by my good reputation and work ethic, approached me. When Maya first invited me to lunch, I was so surprised I thought it was a prank. We had a casual conversation, but Maya was captivated by my personality. Maya officially broke up with James and started dating me. She took the lead in our relationship, and we got married when I was 30. Maya, who respects and loves me wholeheartedly, is truly my goddess of destiny. After marrying Maya, I quickly surpassed James in my career. From James's perspective, I had taken Maya, who was within his grasp, and he might have felt I also took his career and personal life. As the world watched, James and Kevin, both closely connected to me, faced consecutive misfortunes. Their downfall contrasted with my rising success. Amidst this, a huge issue emerged between the two of them. Kevin had bribed James to secure a contract with Johnson. Both Johnson and Sunlight launched thorough investigations. Eventually, the investigators from both companies uncovered the deep-seated relationship between James and Kevin. It was revealed that they frequented a hidden bar together and leaked internal information about each other's companies. Kevin was the first to be exposed, having misappropriated company funds, and he was immediately fired. Once the investigation concluded, James, who was on house arrest, was found to have used the bribed money from Kevin for his affair. James was single, but his affair was with a subordinate's wife from the sales department. The subordinate eventually divorced and kicked out his unfaithful wife. The wife tried to move in with James, but was rejected, leading her to retaliate. She threatened to expose various things she had learned about James during their relationship, causing another uproar and blaming James for the failure of her marriage. She even threatened to sue him. At this point, the company could no longer protect James, and he was forced into early retirement. My father-in-law, Mr. Johnson, was deeply shocked by James's betrayal, especially since James had once dated his daughter and was seriously considered for marriage. Now he was relieved that Maya didn't marry James, as James's misconduct was revealed. My father-in-law's regard for me soared. "Tom, I'm so glad I entrusted my daughter to you. James had a great education and decent sales performance, but he almost fooled me completely." All I could do was give a rueful smile. Compared to Kevin in middle school and James as a working adult, neither was pleasant, but in the end, I emerged victorious. Not feeling competitive or resentful about the comparisons led to good results. James sought help from Kevin, wanting a return on all the favors he'd done, but with Kevin also fired, he couldn't take care of James. In the end, James forced his way into Kevin's house, leading Kevin's wife to call 911, making it a police matter. The police officer who heard the story advised him, and he went home quietly that day. However, worried that he might come back, his wife and children moved to a weekly apartment. This naturally led to a state of separation. The new fiscal year began, and my position changed. I was promoted from director to executive vice president. The responsibility was greater, but I was motivated and excited for the future. The fact that someone like me, who had struggled so much, became an executive greatly boosted the morale of the employees. I didn't want to just sit in the executive's chair. I wanted to be an active leader who always considered the feelings of my subordinates. Amidst my busy days, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened to Kevin and James since then. Other employees seemed to feel the same as rumors about their fate spread. First, Kevin. Since being fired from Sunlight, he had yet to find a new job. Kevin had a wife and children, but they left him around the same time he lost his job. Kevin, who desperately wanted to repair the relationship, visited his wife daily, pleading for her to return. But it seemed a divorce was imminent. His loneliness led him to drink more, and he was often seen wandering the neighborhood drunk. James's situation was equally grim. Fortunately or unfortunately, being single meant he had no wife or children to leave. However, his affair ended abruptly. Even for the woman he was having an affair with, staying with her current husband was more secure than moving in with the jobless James. Her husband, wanting to ensure she and James wouldn't physically meet again, requested a transfer to a regional office. She decided to go with her husband, and they were working on mending their relationship. Left alone again, James struggled to find new employment. Having been single for a long time, James had substantial savings, which he decided to invest. Unfortunately, he lost a significant amount of money in high-risk investments and depleted all his savings meant for future living expenses. James's future looked very bleak. A year has passed since I became executive vice president. My relationship with my wife remains as strong as ever. We didn't have children, but we focused on cherishing our life together. To keep the spark alive, we had weekly dates at upscale restaurants. One evening, while dining at a restaurant with a beautiful night view, Maya made a surprising confession. She was pregnant with twins. At 38, a pregnancy was concerning, but Maya was determined to safely deliver the twins. I was fully committed to supporting her through the pregnancy and beyond. We cherished our daily lives, enjoying the happiness of an expanding family.